This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good evening, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle right here on Northeast Streaming Sports. How are you all tonight? We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube, Twitter. We'll be sharing now the shows to Instagram, by the way. Got some good results. I've posted my first shows here the other day. Good results there to watch later on. Can't go live there, I don't believe. So if you see us on any of these platforms, please like and follow the show and share like and follow the page and share the shows. Guys, we got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to have Lary Sorensen back with us at 7:30. Larry is... if you know Larry's story, he's a former Major League Baseball player, former Michigan Wolverine, very good Major League Baseball player with the Brewers and the Cardinals and the A's and some others. But Larry is now among other things, the color commentator for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, and we bring him in quite a bit on this show to talk about Wake and the ACC. And tonight we'll talk a little about the ACC. Some of the coaching changes, some of the coaches maybe in trouble a little bit, who maybe to watch out for, surprises in the league, and Wake Forest, of course. Also, the ACC scheduling, potential scheduling change, doing away with the divisions as the Pac-12 has, and some other things we'll talk about tonight with Larry. Larry will be on about 7:30. I don't know if we'll get to all my topics with him tonight. We'll certainly have Larry on quite a bit during this run up to the college football season, and certainly when the season starts, we have Larry in on a very consistent basis. So again, welcome to everybody, and thank you to the groups, by the way. And I've been trying to give a shout out to a lot of the groups that let me share, and tonight I wanted to single out the college football discussion and recruiting page. And the moderators there, which I had here a second ago, the moderators there are Gene Powell and Kayla Anderson, and Jennifer Christine is also an admin. But this is a great group, guys, for college football, 13,000 plus members, and they are a good friend to TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle, as they let me share a lot of content there. So thanks for that. They also have a fun college football pool in the fall, so just a quick shout out to them, and hope they're all doing well tonight. So hope everybody's doing well tonight. A little warm here in the Northeast. First thing I want to do tonight is we'll take a look around some of the stories around college football before Larry comes on. As I said, at 7:30ish. Let's take a quick look at some of the stories to talk about tonight. And we'll jump into some other stuff maybe after Larry leaves too, but I want to get your comments on a lot of stuff. Lots of, it's the off season, so there isn't as much news as we would have during the season, but there never seems to be a lack of things to talk about. One of the things that's come up since the show, last week's show, is the Big 12 expansion has been moved up to 2023. So Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, will all be moving over in 2023. And they've had to pay, they were already paying a $10 million exit fee to the American Conference. And that's been up to $8 million. So it's costing them $18 million to get out of their conference they're in now and move to the Big 12. But it's going to be a good move for these schools. Yeah, $18 million, Anthony. Good evening to Anthony Price. $18 million these schools will pay in total Amazing. Good morning, Al. Good point. There will be at least 1 year right now. Things could change. Who knows? I mean, with these teams coming over early, it's possible that Texas and Oklahoma look for an early exit to the SEC as well. Who knows? But right now we're set up for 1, possibly 2 years of 14 teams in the Big 12. So that would be very interesting as well. What do we got here? Good evening, Rick Sherlock. And if I didn't say good morning or good evening to you, Alan, I certainly say good evening to you. In the new woke world we live in, well, this ought to be an interesting comment. Should I have read this first, Rick, before I put it up? In the new woke world we live in, the George Washington University nicknamed they dropped the nickname the Colonials. Oh my gosh. No, you should not be ashamed of being Glove City Colonial. I'm sorry. I think you guys all know where I stand on this. I apologize. Well, actually, I don't apologize. I certainly do not want to offend people, but I'm one of the least woke people on the planet. I don't think we should have to apologize for things that, I don't think the Florida State Seminoles need to change their name. I don't know that a lot of college schools that have changed their names need to do it. And good grief. Are teams leaving for a better scheduled or better bowl game? Well, they're leaving for a potential bigger payday. Remember, Anthony, one thing to keep in mind is, these Power 5 conferences get more teams in better bowls. And the conferences all share in those paydays. I mean, if, for instance, Oklahoma goes to the Fiesta Bowl, and let's just say I don't know what it is today, $14 million. Well, that money is split amongst all the Big 12 schools. And that stands for every bowl game that the conference goes to. And with no shortage of bowl games today, they're in all, $15 or $20 million bowls. But all that kitty gets split up between the teams. And obviously there's a lot more money available there than there is in the American Conference, just a fact of life. Plus the TV contracts are much, much bigger. The schools all share in that. The Big 12, who knows whether they'll end up with a TV contract. We'll talk a little bit about the Big 10's TV contract, most likely where they're going to end up. We don't know the end spot. Well, it's a good spot. Actually, those are a good example. We talk about the money. Now, the Big 12 is not going to get the kind of money. The SEC is going to get $3 billion TV contract from ESPN starting next year, I believe. The Big 10 is looking at $1.1 billion over 6 years from wherever they go. They're with Fox right now, and some other outlets. But this is where the money changes, right? The American Conference just cannot compete with that kind of dough. So that's where that money comes from, Anthony. And that's why it behooves them to go there. Plus, obviously, you have a better chance at national championship consideration, playoff consideration. We all know the gripes that people have had about Cincinnati getting in, and when UCF was really good a couple of years ago, they declared themselves national champions because they didn't get a chance to play for it. You run the table in the Big 12, you're going to have a much better chance. You're going to be in, the college football playoff. That's just a fact of life too. So you have a better chance at national championship, more money from TV contracts, more money from bowl shares and everything else. Big 12 is going to have a big payout for all schools this year. Again, not as much as the SEC, but still a lot. Yes, the Big 12 will, again, I don't know what their TV contract is specifically. I believe it's with ESPN, and certainly this is one of the issues with the Oklahoma, Texas leaving for the SEC is that, ESPN was involved in those negotiations, which the Big 12 was none too happy about. They're partners, and they're conniving with two of the schools to leave to another school that ESPN just coincidentally will be picking up the TV contract for in a couple of years. So, this is par for the course for the NCAA, the shenanigans that go on. But again, I think it's good news for these schools, and BYU will be joining, I believe, also in 2023. Alan, you can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I do think BYU joins at that point as well. And in a related story, obviously, UAB, Florida Atlantic, Rice, Texas San Antonio, Charlotte, and I may be missing a school here, will be moving to join. Yeah, I know I'm missing somebody. Will be moving to join the American Conference at the same time in 2023. So big changes the next couple of years on the college landscape, and nothing new there. So, yeah, that's what I thought. BYU is going to have a good team. BYU is looking for a New Year's Day bowl this year before they move into the Big 12. We talked last week about some of the non-Power 5 schools that will have a chance maybe at a New Year's Day bowl, if not the ability to crash the college football playoff. This year, I do not really see any of those, group of 5 teams getting a chance. And I guess even though BYU is playing an independent schedule, we'll count them as group of 5. But it's supposed to be a very good football team with a chance to crash the New Year's Day bowl seed. So, that would be very interesting as well. So that's pretty big news. We talked a little bit about, let's see, the Big Ten's new contract. So TV contracts are what's driving college football today, obviously. TV contracts are one of the things that's holding up the expansion of the college football playoff. The ACC has got themselves trapped in a horrible contract, given the current landscape, a horrible contract with ESPN. And the Big Ten is the latest Power 5 conference that will be looking to, cash in big time. We said the SEC, I was going to change this here real quick. The SEC is at $3 billion, and that's over. I'm not sure what that's for. $3 billion. I want to say it's for 6 years. And the Big Ten is really looking at $1.1 billion over 6 years. Now, they don't want to lock themselves into these 20, 25-year contracts like schools have done in the past or conferences have done in the past. And that's why kind of the ACC's got themselves behind the 8 ball a little bit when it comes to TV contracts, because they locked themselves into what was a pretty good deal at the time with ESPN. And I think their contract runs another 15 years or something like that. So again, money drives everything here, and more of the same here. I mean, whatever. Hey, look who's here! It's Mickey Delaney, representing the state of Washington and the Cougars. I think you represent both Washington and Washington State, if I'm not mistaken, Mickey. I think you kind of split your allegiances there, if I remember right. Good to have you back on the show, Mickey. Good to see you tonight. We're just talking some news around college football as we wait to bring in Mr. Lary Sorensen, Wake Forest color commentator, to talk some ACC previews tonight. So, guys, bring your topics to the table. We'll talk about them before and after Larry joins us. What else is going on? I read an article today about Herm Edwards in Arizona State, and an anonymous coach. Where was he anyway? It was an anonymous coach, and I wanted to get this right, but I just don't know what I did with the article. Anyway, there's an anonymous coach on the West Coast who was talking about Herm Edwards and Arizona State and it being, quote unquote, the biggest dumpster fire in college football. We all know what's going on there, with very little, oversight from from the administration on the coaching staff. Many of the coaches last year were suspended by the NCAA, the assistant coaches, and there's a lot of angst around Arizona State. They started off the year last year pretty well. I think they were 5-1, and then they lost, maybe 4 of their last 5 games. Lost their bowl game. I think they've won 1 bowl game in the 5 years that Herm's been there. Herm Edwards, by all accounts, is a good human being, but he was a bad choice here. Part of this article and some other articles that I've read were, what would have happened if Billy Napier, who's currently the head coach at Florida, formerly at Louisiana Lafayette. He was the Sun Devils. He was the Sun Devils offensive coordinator, and in 2017 he was considered for this job, but they passed him over from Herm Edwards when they replaced Todd Graham in 2017. Now, obviously, it's a leap of faith. We didn't know he was going to go and have the success that he had at Louisiana, and now he's about to begin his first season at Florida. But this is kind of par for the course for Arizona State over the years. Todd Graham was not a great hire, and it's been quite a while. You got to go back a ways. You got to go to the the Jake the Snake Plummer years to find some consistent good football out of the Arizona State Sun Devils. And I hope Sun Devils is okay to say, Rick, to go to your point. I really need to dive into this George Washington story a little bit more, I think. But do you think they keep Bedlam even when Oklahoma moves? I don't know what's going to happen. This is one of the problems I've talked about, Alan, with these restructuring of conferences. We've lost a lot of these rivalry games. We lost Oklahoma and Nebraska. Now they played, I think, last year, but they don't play every year anymore. And the more you go to these expanded super conferences, the less opportunity they're going to have to play outside of the conference, and the less opportunity to find this type of matchup, because you're going to go get cupcakes when you're not going to play your conference schedule. We've talked about this a lot. The SEC teams normally play about 1 good non-conference team a year. I believe Alabama and Texas play this year. Texas and Texas A&M haven't played regularly, since A&M went to the SEC. Now with Texas going back, maybe they will get that, because the Southeast Conference is looking to change their schedule. And we'll talk to Larry about some of this talk that's going around the ACC. But the SEC is considering changing their schedule, doing away with divisions, and I believe going to this 3-5-5 model, where you would pick 3 teams you would play. I don't know, you would pick them, but you would play the same 3 teams year after year. For instance, I would think Alabama will play Auburn, right? Every single year. And then they'll get 5, a rotation of 5. Let's see, I wrote it down here. A rotating slate of home and away games with 5 other teams. So again, you're going to end up with as these conferences get bigger and bigger, every team doesn't play everybody in the conference every year anymore. You're going to have 14 teams in the SEC. Well, there's no way to play every single team in a conference, which is part of the problem with these super conferences in my mind. Losing these rivalries is even a bigger problem. Oklahoma State is a huge rivalry. Now, when Texas and Oklahoma go, they'll have to continue their Red River rivalry, right? I mean, that's going to have to be one of the 3 games. You play to win the game. You got to love Herm, but, Herm has been a disaster at Florida State. And Mickey Delaney saying hello to Rick. Anyway, back to Arizona State. Very interesting. Now they're going to be looking for a new coach this year. I've had this conversation with Herm is awesome. Herm's awesome. I said Herm's a good guy, but Herm's a disaster as a football coach. Let's look at, his record in the NFL is nothing sterling. He didn't really, he had competitive football teams, but this guy wasn't knocking on the Super Bowl door every year. Now that since he's been at Arizona State since 2017, the team has not really competed for a Pac-12 title. And now he's got this scandal still hanging over his head, and this whole thing's going to implode. There's still an investigation going on there. And this thing's going to implode. It's just a matter of whether it's, during the season, next off season. Wish I could find that article. Oh, I know where that was. Hold on a second. Yeah. There's my boy Herm. Biggest dumpster fire in college football. Great picture. I should have shared this picture of Herm. Here's some of the quotes that this coach had to say. Biggest dumpster fire in college football. It's absolutely mind-blowing that Herm's still employed, at least in the mind of the coaching community. So this is not, this is this guy speaking up, but it's a universal thought, apparently. Everyone knows it's a ticking time bomb, but no one knows it's going to go off in a month or a year from now. They look like a mid-level SEC team when they get off the bus, and you start to see what they've been recruiting. Then you finish the game, and it's like you just played a MWC team, Mountain West Conference team. They're wildly inconsistent. They turn the ball over. They make mental errors. It's all stuff that screams no stability. We've played them when they looked, when they were locked in and physical, and we've played them when they're just not interested in being there. This falls back to the coaching staff. And again, this is the football part of this. This isn't even the rest of it, where it's really going to come crashing down. So this program has a chance of total implosion at midseason because there's no consistency anywhere. Not in the coaches, not in the head coach, not in the roster. The program's always good on paper, but it fails to really win consistently. And this is another example. It's a good point. Again, you have to go back to Jake the Snake Plumber days to see some consistency out of Arizona State out there in the Pac-12. Pac-12 is really kind of dysfunctional the last, since USC's run. And even that was kind of dysfunctional at the end because of all the allegations, right, against Pete Carroll and the losing one national championship, Reggie Bush losing a Heisman Trophy. The whole league's been kind of a roller coaster and just a mess for decades, it seems. How long ago was that? Pete Carroll left there in the mid-2000s, so 15 years ago at least. Oh, my gosh. What else is going on around college football? You guys got a topic? We got about 7 minutes before we'll have our guest on today, which will be Lary Sorensen, color commentator, one of the great friends of this show and TGI Sports Talk in general. Alan did give me some of the cities, and I do see it now on ESPN as well, that'll be hosting the Army-Navy game in the next several years. Foxborough, Massachusetts, which I'm very fond of, obviously, is one of those games. They'll host the 2023 game, followed by Landover, Maryland in 24. Baltimore will host it in 2025. East Rutherford, New Jersey, which is where the Giants play, in 26, and Philadelphia in 27. This year's game, I'm assuming, I don't know where this year's game is. That's great. This story doesn't talk about where this year's game is, so it'll be interesting. we'll talk about Wake Forest. They played Army at Army last year, and they get to go visit Wake Forest, get a return visit this year. So that ought to be kind of interesting as well. So that's one of the stories kicking around. Marcus Freeman has to walk back some comments he made about Ohio State. He was quoted by CBS Sports in a story that was published last Friday that players can't cheat academics at Notre Dame, when he was outlining differences between Notre Dame, Ohio State, Cincinnati, where he worked as an assistant. He said, if you don't go to class at places like that, okay, take some online classes, show up for your appointments. At Notre Dame, you're forced every day to go to class. So he's kind of walked back that. He never discredited the quality of education at Ohio State, where he earned 2 degrees and began his coaching career as a graduate assistant way back in 2010. Way back in 2010, my gosh. So, the first bit of controversy around the new Irish coach is this news coming out of Ohio State. So it's very interesting. So this year's game is in Philly. That's what I was kind of guessing, given the fact that they didn't play in Philly again until 27. That would make sense that they're playing there this year. What do you guys think about that game being moved around anyway? That game was played for years and years and years in Philadelphia and in the old RFK Stadium. Before that, I know it was played in Yankee Stadium. I know it was played in Washington for a bunch of years. And growing up, I remember the game as being played in Philadelphia at RFK Stadium more than anywhere else. I mean, do you think this game is good moving it around, or should it find a home? I mean, they're never going to play in the home fields of the schools because there's just not going to be able to get enough people in the stadium, right? What else is in the news? Arkansas's Sam Pittman just got a nice extension at Arkansas to be as the head coach. When I talk about the scheduling that I just talked about, Arkansas wants to be in play to play Texas every year when the Longhorns begin SEC competition, and potentially the SEC goes to this new scheduling model. Longtime rivals, Arkansas and Texas, in the old Southwest Conference, by the way. I mean, who wouldn't like to see that? I've talked about this before. Who wouldn't like to see that league put back together? Texas A&M, Arkansas, Baylor, Houston, SMU, Texas Tech, later on TCU. It'd still be a really good football conference, no? Don't get me going. I'll leave that. We'll talk about that with Larry. What else? What other news we got here? I mean, let's see. Heading to Gillette Stadium, we talked about that. Clemson lands a top 50 recruit and defensive lineman Victor Burley. We'll be talking a lot about Clemson, or at least some about Clemson with Larry in a little bit. Miami is facing an inquiry. We're going to be talking about the Hurricanes, and I really think it's a team that's got a chance to make some huge strides this year very quickly. With Pittsburgh potentially stepping backwards in the Coastal, I think they've got a chance to really make a move. They've got some inquiries into booster John Ruiz and some of his NIL dealings, which I really don't want to get into tonight. Good grief. Every week we seem to get sucked into that story, right, about NIL, and hopefully we don't do that tonight. So what we'll do, though, without further ado, one of the great friends of TGI Sports Talk and the college football huddle specifically, Lary Sorensen, who, one group of our fans I know will know as a former Major League pitcher with the Brewers and the Cardinals, and very good one at that, and a Michigan alumnus who somehow ends up in the ACC calling color commentary for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Good evening, Lary Sorensen.
Keith, how are you? It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's great to have you back with us again. You've always brought such great insight, and I know that you're coming off, and we'll talk a little bit about it before we dive into the football scene. You've had a very busy spring with the Wake Forest baseball team, who just came off a very good season and a tough loss in the regionals at the College World Series. How was that the experience for you this year?
Well, they went from 20 wins to 41 wins. So anytime you make a turnaround like that, it's got to be a great year. Discovered some freshmen that came in. They had the 13th ranked freshman class in the country last year, and they played very, very well. Just had 4 players named to the all-region team. So they had a terrific season, hit 115 regular season home runs. So there were balls flying all over the place, which is not my kind of game, but nevertheless, it makes it fun to watch. So it was a really fun spring. There was a lot of great baseball. And, we're not going to talk about NIL, so we're going to go back to COVID for just a little bit, because I still think we're seeing COVID effects on every sport that we're watching. And I think it affects everything. And I think we saw maybe a little bit of that with the Wake Forest team. But it was a great spring. A lot of fun to watch young players develop.
Cool. Did you get a chance with all that going on? Were you around the football team at all during the spring game or spring practices at all?
Just a little bit. They actually had the spring game just before, I believe it was the Clemson series that the baseball team was playing, which is right next to the football stadium. So I was kind of running from one end of the press box in baseball down to the end so I could peek into the football stadium and see what was going on a little bit. But have been looking at the tape of it because it was carried on the ACC network. So it's been a terrific winter for the football team.
Yeah, before we move on from the baseball, Rick Sherlock wants to say welcome back and let you know that Mark Black was used as a DH here locally. He's playing for the Amsterdam Mohawks in the perfect. I think it's a perfect game league, if I'm not mistaken. Rick can correct me there. But
yeah, that's a really nice combination they've got going with Amsterdam. A lot of Wake Forest players have gone up there. Larry Sheets, Gavin Sheets' father, coached that team for a while, so they established a really nice connection, and a lot of players have gone up there. And I saw Mark had a big double the other day to drive in some important runs for him, so glad to see that.
He did. It's really good baseball that league plays in general, so it's a lot of fun. I get to a few games myself a year. I'm from the Amsterdam area myself.
Okay.
And Rick is as well. That's why he brings it up. So anyway.
Well, I appreciate that, Rick. Thank you. Always good to have you tuning in.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to talk a little Wake Forest. I want to talk ACC with you in general, I think, tonight, Larry, if that's okay. And as we go forward, we'll certainly dive more into Wake Forest too, but we'll touch on that. The league this year is going to have a little bit different feel. We got a bunch of new coaches coming in, new coaches at Virginia Tech, Duke. Where else? I'm missing. Oh, from Miami. How do I forget Miami?
With Miami, sure, yeah.
And it's going to be a very interesting dynamic. And with Pittsburgh losing, both their Pickett and also their top wide receiver going out to USC. It's going to be a very
and then getting a quarterback from USC back, so that's kind of an interesting little byplay.
Yes, Slovis coming east. That is very interesting. So they do kind of fill that quarterback gap, but I gotta believe they're going to take a little step backwards. Don't you think? Pittsburgh and that coastal may be wide open for maybe Miami to take a leap. What are your thoughts there?
Well, first of all, I think Miami's going to be really, really good, and Van Dyke is the real deal. He's a player. He could, he's a gunslinger in the old school definition of a guy that loves to throw the football. He'll try to jam it in a crack any way that he can, and he'll take some chances. So I think that he's going to be a really exciting player to watch. I think it's going to be the year of the quarterback again in the ACC, and I thought last year the conference had as much depth as any conference that was out there, and I think that we're going to have a lot of people that are going to be fun to watch again this fall.
Yeah, we talked about that last year, and I think it'll be the same situation. Some people looked at it because of Clemson's, coming back to earth a little bit last year, right? They looked at the ACC as being down, but I thought there was a lot of great stories with obviously Wake Forest ascending and having a great season under Dave Clawson, and North Carolina State having a great year. Pittsburgh, we talked about. This is a pretty deep team. I mean, or league. Which one of these coaches do you think right now is coming into Marco's got to be coming into the best situation. But other than him, I mean, where do you see these other guys and their program ranking?
I think he's also got an athletic director that came over from Clemson that is going to really, really put a charge into that program as well, Dan Radakovich. And I think that's going to they're going to do some great things for Miami. How long it takes them to get there is going to.
Larry's gone frozen on us here. I had that happen at work today, and I had a similar face that my boss took a screenshot of and said to me. Well, we'll wait for Larry to kind of come back. He's talking about the changes at Miami, and they've made a serious investment in the football program again. I mean, that sounds funny talking about Miami. Are you back, Larry?
Yeah, here we go.
You were frozen there a little bit when you were talking about the new athletic director and that. I was just commenting that, Miami's made a serious investment in the football program again, which sounds funny talking about the Miami Hurricanes, but they have. So you can continue your thoughts there.
Well, you know what I really like about it is that one of their focuses seems to be to bring it back to the students. They want to try to figure out a way to get a stadium on campus instead of out at the Hard Rock. And I think that athletics need to be so much a part of that process for people that are in college. And I think that's really important as a developmental aspect for the athletes to be able to have that feeling. And I think that would be a terrific thing, number one. Number two, I think that he's really got a great understanding of how to build a program. Clemson has the respect of everybody around the country with what their program does in all the sports that they've got, but football, of course, in particular. And so I think that he'll bring that to Miami. And I think it'll be great for the league as a brand to have that brand of the University of Miami, to have the U back on top and competing the way that they should be.
It's funny you read my mind, because I was going to ask you about that. I mean, one of the big problems with Miami is that, playing so far from campus, and it's just, you see some of those games and the stadium's half empty.
Yeah, and it's kind of, the Hard Rock is kind of in the middle of nowhere, although the hotel is really cool. The hotel is shaped like a guitar right across the street, right across the expressway from it. And that's pretty neat. But it's a different type experience, and you're taking, it's away from the campus, and you don't get that flavor. It's more of a professional atmosphere out there. And I think if they can find a way to get it downtown and get it down near the school, it'd be great.
Who else in that coastal? I mean, again, we expect Pittsburgh maybe to slide a little bit. Maybe they can maintain it, as you said, bringing in Slovis to play quarterback. Who else do you think might surprise? I mean, this is the division with three new coaches in this division alone.
3 new coaches, yep.
And a couple of coaches that really need to have a good year. They're going to, Mac, I do that all the time. Mac Brown, this is a pivotal year for, I think, him at North Carolina. And also Collins at Georgia Tech needs to kind of step it up. What are your thoughts on this division? And could we see any surprises here?
Well, I think that we will see surprises. And I agree with you about Mac Brown, that it's time for that program to be more consistent, because when they're good, they're as good as anybody in the league. It's just they never seem to be good 12 times in a row, which is a really difficult thing to do. But, it seems like they've got a tendency, even just reading what they're saying, they've got a tendency to look past people and not take every game as seriously as they should. But they always have great talent. They always recruit the state of North Carolina unbelievably. And so there's great competition for athletes in the state of North Carolina. Give me a kid named Brennan Armstrong throwing a football, and I'll take my chances. They're going to be able to score some points. So I think they're going to be a team that might be really exciting. They'll have a new scheme, and they'll have some new things going on up there. So if you want to talk about surprises, that might be the club that really leaps out at you that nobody was expecting to maybe do well right away.
You think that Gene Chizik hiring as a defensive coordinator is going to have a big impact there?
He knows his football.
Yeah.
That he knows his football, and I think that it'll definitely help him.
He's an interesting story, having won a national championship, and 2 years later, he's basically out of college football for it seems like a decade. He's been doing TV, I think, the last 6 years. Maybe
if you took that story and put it in today's atmosphere, everybody would say, "Oh, it's just another day in the life,"
Yeah,
because that's the way sports is these days. Back when it happened, it was really quite an amazing thing.
I wonder if he might be considered the heir apparent to Mac Brown when he decides to step away. I mean, I know they've got a relationship going back to Texas, so I don't know what. But I don't know if he's leaving in time of his own.
I don't know. Is Mac ever going to get old?
Well, that's the thing. He may not leave his own.
Brown's ever going to get old.
Good point. Listen, I wanted to ask you too about.
I'll tell you another team to keep your eye on, and this might surprise you some, but Mike Elko is a smart coach. And you know how much respect I've got for Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. I think he's one of the top coaches in the country, and I think it's been proven. And he says that Elko is as smart a football guy as he's been around. And I take that to heart. And so it might not be this year, but keep watching what they do. And I think that they can turn themselves into a pretty good football team.
Well, there can't be a tougher situation in the ACC than Duke, though, right? I mean, now Dave Cutlass had some success there early on. I mean, I think he won in the first, 8 years he was there. He won like 57 games, which isn't awful at Duke. He was 10 games over.
It's hard to sustain. Truthfully, Wake Forest and Duke are very similar. You know, they're very, very similar with the academic standards and the different things that you're expected to do while you're a student at the school that aren't necessarily expected of you at some other schools. And the programs are very similar, and the schools are very similar, the small private type schools, but and with the giant high tuition that they have to go with it. So it's a tough place to recruit. It's a tough place to play.
Yeah, because you got to be a real student athlete to go to school at both of those schools, right? So
you do, and there's something to be said too for playing in front of 40 or 50 or 60,000 people. That's different than playing in front of 15 or 18 or 20,000 people too, quite honestly. And you can see it, and it's really disappointing as you go to Duke when they're struggling, or Wake Forest when they were struggling. Now Wake's doing a pretty good job of building up the fan experience, but and they've been getting some sellouts, but it's tough to get people in there on a consistent basis.
Well, moving to your Atlantic, the division your school plays in, Wake Forest. Let's move to the Atlantic, and Wake Forest did win that division last year and lost a championship game to Pittsburgh, as we know, with Pickett and his fake slide and all that. We all remember that story, but a great season.
The fastest rule change in the history of the NCAA was that like Pickett slide rule.
Right. It seemed like it was the next Monday they changed the rule. So Wake Forest wins it last year. North Carolina was right on their heels. We got Clemson, who it's going to be hard to keep Clemson down. This is going to be a very competitive. Florida State has got to do better. Mike Norvell, he's on the hot seat this year, I would think, as well. How do you see this division shaking out? I mean, I think this is obviously at least a 3-team race, if not maybe a dark horse in there, maybe in Florida State stepping up a little.
I think it could be much more than a 3-team race, because I think Boston College could really surprise a lot of people too. They've got an excellent running back, got a quarterback coming back that's got some experience, that missed a lot of time last year. I think Jeff Hafley does a terrific job as the head coach. So if you ask me about a surprise team in the Atlantic, I think it would probably be Boston College. I can see them competing. Florida State, I agree. Mike Norvell is on the hot seat some. Lost a tremendous defensive player, so he's going to have to make that adjustment and see if they can get the defensive side of the ball figured out a little bit. But they always seem to have great athletes. They remind you a little bit of North Carolina in that they get great athletes and they just have a hard time fitting all the pieces together sometimes. Sometimes guys are looking at the NFL a little faster than they're looking at the ACC and things like that. But they always have great athletes coming out of the state of Florida. It just seems odd to me that we say, 10-3, what a stinko year that was.
That's hard, right? I mean, again, they got off to a bad start, and it wasn't pretty when they did win, but they won 10 games. You're right. That most teams would sign up for that every year.
Yeah, I think so. And I think everybody's got him projected to be there again this year. I think that Uyagalali or whatever his name is, and I'll get it right when we play him. I have to know it 7 hours before game time, and that's when I get the name right.
It's expected on this show that we mispronounce names. Don't worry.
But yeah, you do it on purpose. I call him DJ because it's a lot easier. But he's a great athlete. He got to Clemson. He got to Clemson for a reason, and I think that he'll bounce back and he'll have a better year. I think their defensive line is going to be a monster. Their defensive side of the ball is going to be very, very good, and that gives your offense the opportunity to be a little bit less proficient when your defense can carry you like they do.
Let's talk about your school that you're working for and announcing for in Wake Forest. Obviously, a great year last year. The offense is going to be prolific again. I'm assuming they had so many weapons, and most of them are back that I'm aware of. The problems are on the defensive side of the football. What improvements can we expect there?
Well, the first thing that they did was Dave Clawson hired Brad Lambert to be his defensive coordinator, was the head coach of the startup Charlotte program, got them back on their feet, and then went to Purdue, did a good job at Purdue, and his defensive backs in particular were very solid at Purdue, and he coached that group as defensive coordinator also. And so he's come in and rejuvenated that side of the football. They'll be strong up front. They'll run about a 7 or 8 man rotation on the defensive line, and everybody's very excited about that. Linebacker needs to get a little bit stronger, and that's an area that'll get a lot of attention. So they brought in Glenn Spencer, who was the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State two stops ago, but he was there for 7 years and had a lot to do with that linebacker core in Oklahoma State playing real good defense. And mostly it was more of a coaching staff situation where they made some changes. James Adams came in and he'll coach these safeties, a former Wake Forest player that has had a really good resume going, and he'll be in to coach the safeties. So Dave Clawson says they need more consistency.
Larry needs a break, I think, every once in a while to catch his breath. Hopefully he'll be back with us. We're talking about the Demon Deacons right now in the ACC with Lary Sorensen, the color commentator from there. And I will get to your guys' comments. There's Larry's back. I can see. When I see your hands kind of jump around, I know I got you back. So.
It must be my internet up here in the hills. You know, we've got the Pony Express that delivers our mail still. So it takes a while after things.
If they're delivering to the internet, we got a problem, I guess. So, listen, it's going to be an exciting year in the ACC, as we talked about before. Some of these guys, I want to talk about some of the coaches that are on the hot seat, and some fairly and maybe unfairly. We talked about Mike Norvell. A lot of rumors flying around about, Deion Sanders and, where he's going to go after doing a great job at Jackson State. I think, myself included, I thought, we thought that this was just going to be like a clown show for Deion, but the guy can coach a little bit. And do you think if Mike Norvell ends up out, that Deion Sanders would actually be considered for this head coaching job?
I think he absolutely would be considered. And this is my opinion again, but Florida State has always seemed like a school where the boosters are pretty heavily invested in the program and have a lot of say in what goes on with the Florida State, all of their programs. And, they're big, as we're seeing in baseball with the talk of Link Jarrett going back to his alma mater as the head coach after Mike Martin Jr. got fired. They really like to take care of their own. So Deion would fit that profile. And I think you're exactly right. People thought, what's he going to bring? Because we all had Prime on our minds when we think of him. But gosh darn it, he gets athletes to come, which is a really good place to start. You get great athletes to come to your school, you got a chance. And then if you can teach those athletes how to play football as well, you've got something going on. And Deion didn't get to be a great athlete in two sports by accident, and by being such a great athlete, because there's a lot of great athletes in both of those sports, and he managed to rise to the top in both of them.
And didn't hurt himself radar-wise by bringing in the number one defensive back in the country that will right out from under Florida State either. That helps them a lot. And I'm sure that if with the way things are in the college landscape today, that if Deion were to come to Florida State, the kid's name's escaping me right at the moment, but he'd be coming along with him, I'm sure.
Well, there's a lot of flashing glitter about Dion, but when you look underneath, he's done a lot of very solid things in his
Oh, yeah.
career.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And he's done a great job at Jackson State, so he's a legitimate contender for sure. How about some other guys? A guy who I really like is Dino Babers, and things haven't gone the last few years at Syracuse. He looked like they were turning a quarter a couple of years ago, and since COVID especially, that which hurt a lot of teams, but he could be in trouble if he doesn't kind of turn it around this year at Syracuse, I think. What are your thoughts on Dino and the Syracuse?
I think you're absolutely right, and I've said this a number of times on your show that when I watch the coaches' press conferences on Monday and Tuesday, whether or not Wake Forest is playing Syracuse or has them coming or has already played them, I always watch Dino because he's the kind of guy I would have loved to have played for. I'd have run through a wall for him. He's an inspiring guy, and I think he's got a lot of things going on. Now, they changed their offense about halfway through the year, shortly before they played Wake Forest. They got a terrific running back up there, Sean Tucker, who is just an outstanding, one of the best running backs in the country. And then Garrett Schneck, let me get this right, Schrader is their quarterback. And he turned into a running quarterback, and they really revamped their offense. And we'll see if people are able to make that adjustment this year or if that's going to be his salvation going forward, because they were really, really tough to stop down the stretch the last half of last season.
Is there a guy – I don't know, I want to ask this question. Is there a guy that you can see whether it's and we talked about Mac Brown and North Carolina being a real surprise, but one of these new coaches, you talked about Mike Elko. Virginia Tech, Tony Elliott, Pay at Virginia Tech. Have any of these guys got a chance to make their mark this year, or they got a process ahead of them to kind of get to the top of these divisions?
If I had to pick one that could jump right in and make an immediate impact, it would be Tony Elliott, because he's an offensively oriented guy and he's got some weapons to start with. He's got a terrific tight end up there. He's got a quarterback that loves to throw it and can scramble around and is a real gamer, kind of like a Pickett type to me, and except from the other side, from the wrong side, the left-hander. But
right.
He's a guy that can really do some things. And I think that Tony Elliott's a great offensive mind, and they might be somebody that halfway through the season, people are saying, where the heck did they come from? And then, well, we shouldn't be surprised,
Yeah. It's interesting. There's several teams with the profile of a lot of offense, and they're going to give up a lot of points. And Virginia, interestingly enough, Bronco Mendenhall's calling card for a lot of years was his defense at BYU and Virginia, and that just fell apart the last couple of years at Virginia. And it's been a struggle for North Carolina, a struggle for Wake Forest. It's interesting dynamic that there's so much offense in this league, and the defenses have struggled in some cases.
Yeah, if you hold a team to 3 touchdowns, you've had a pretty good game in this league, is the way that it's been for the last couple of years. And Wake Forest has been as guilty of that as anybody, so that'll be interesting to watch. Really going to miss Bronco Mendenhall, because he was a cerebral guy that enjoyed a lot more than just football, but applied those kinds of lessons to football. And he would have been another guy that you'd love to sit down and have dinner with. And watching him and Dave Clawson go back and forth in the chess match all the time, that was always really interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see Bronco back coaching here on the sidelines at some point in the near future. He's too good a coach, and he's a good person, as you said, or appears to be. I don't know him, but I'm sure he is.
He's got a lot of charity work that he wants to do and that he believes in, and is doing, different trips over to impoverished countries and helping out with things like that. So a good person is exactly right.
That's cool. A couple of comments I wanted to get to. I didn't want Alan to think I was ignoring him. He's a big Big 12 guy and Oklahoma guy, so he wants to know your thoughts about Venable leaving Clemson and taking over the reins at Oklahoma for Lincoln Riley.
Well, I think that the Sooners better put their big boy pants on every day that they strap it on, because he's an intense as an individual, as you will see. And the stuff that you see on the sidelines is the stuff that you get from him all the time. So you better be ready to go when you put that color on and that jersey on and head out there for him. I think he's a great hire. Absolutely ready to be a head coach, and I think that he will do a good job down there. They've always had a great defensive tradition, and I
Yeah.
think you can build on that. I remember when they whipped up on Michigan in the Orange Bowl back in about '76 or so. One of the Selman brothers hit Ricky Leach when he was about 3 yards out of bounds, and yeah, but they've always been a great defensive team, and he'll build on that tradition. And I expect them to have a really good year once they get things unraveled and once they get things settled down a little bit and get into a routine.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's ready to coach. He's turned down several job offers
Yeah.
before this, waiting for the right situation. And you can't get a better one than this. I mean, Bob Stoops came out here a month or so ago, and the Sooner fans have been all worried about Lincoln Riley and leaving and the program. And he made a comment that, Lincoln Riley didn't invent football at Oklahoma. There's been some other pretty good coaches here, and I think we'll be fine going forward. And I think they're in good hands with Venable myself.
The word that keeps coming up is fit. Does this coach fit that style? Does it fit that history? Does it fit that tradition? And Riley seemed to me like, he seemed like a USC guy. He seemed like a guy that would thrive. And you see the coaches that Mike Elko, for example, had some other chances to go to different places and turned them down, waiting for the right opportunity. And those are the smart guys, same as Dave Clawson did, finding the right fit at Wake Forest. His style of play and his approach to the game works very well with what the university wants to promote internally as well. And that's why you get players to come back for their 5th, 6th, and once again 7th year to stick around the program, even though maybe they could have gone to the NFL a year earlier.
Yeah. Let me grab Rick's got it. I think this one's tongue in cheek, and I think it's about a topic we talked about earlier. He brought up that the George Washington Colonials were dropping the Colonial nickname, and he wanted to know where we're going next with having to change nicknames. He's worried about the Demon and Demon Deacon. I think we'll be okay. I'm not sure. We're not really offending demons. Or maybe we're offending deacons.
I think we'll be okay, but it is a real liberal school, though. We do know that. So.
I should be careful. I'll be getting kicked out of nobody from Wake Forest will let me share my show with him. Alan talking about Venables being the defensive coordinator there before he went to Clemson. So that's a good point. He's got a homecoming of sorts as well. So good point out of Alan.
And I think we're seeing that, a lot. I think that's, again, starting to mean a lot. I think for years and years, it was one of the most important things. Is he a Michigan man? Does he have, Michigan State ties? Does he have Purdue ties? Whatever. Clemson ties. And then I think we got away from it, and they said, this guy's just a great coach. And the coaches bounce around, man. When you look at coaches' resumes, you were getting on me about how many baseball teams I played for. Those coaches out there have coached a lot more places than I ever played. I guarantee you that.
Just to be clear, I wasn't getting you on it for. I mean, you got to play for a bunch of teams. There's only a handful of guys in the history of all the human race have got to play for Major League Baseball, and you're one of them. So I would never take anything away.
But I think that we have gotten back to one of the prerequisites being, does he have a history and tradition with the place that we're bringing him in to coach? I think we're seeing a lot more of that.
And that's a good thing, I think, for the sport, because
absolutely.
Right? With all the realignment and everything, we've lost a lot of the traditions of college football. So this is a good thing, right? Yeah.
And if you were a player and you were recruited to go to a school, you bought into the philosophy of what that school had as its basic premises and its tradition and the way they ran their operation and the little things about the school, the nuances that made it so important to you, for you to say as a recruit that had multiple offers, that's the place that I want to go. And so I think that is important. And I think bringing people back to maintain those traditions and to maintain those kinds of histories and be affiliated with their school is a good thing. Absolutely.
I did want to, I got a bunch of stuff we can talk about, but I'll save it so we got some stuff to talk about during the off season. I'll bring you in, periodically if it's okay with you during the off season here. But one thing I did want to touch with you before we let you go tonight is talk a little bit about Michigan. Your alma mater had a great rebound season last year, obviously, winning the Big Ten for the first time in 19 years, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and getting into the college football playoff for the first time. do you see the momentum continuing there? And one of the reasons I asked, I read an article today talking about what does CJ Carr's commitment to Notre Dame say about Jim Harbaugh. Obviously, the family's got great ties to Michigan, with his grandfather being the head coach, and both his parents are alumni. And some people thought it was a sure thing that he would choose Michigan, and he chose Notre Dame. So I guess, do you see the momentum continuing, and does this kind of thing mean anything in the grand scheme of things?
I do see the momentum continuing. I think that they're making good hires in the coaching staff. They're always going to get very good players in. They're scouring the world to find athletes, and I think they will continue to bring good players in, and they'll be well coached. As far as the CJ Carr thing goes, and Lloyd was the coach there for most of the time when I was doing the sidelines for Michigan. So I would get him in the post-game interviews and everything else, and we got to know each other just a little bit. And I think that the Carr family has always said, be your own man. Do what's best for you. And I think it speaks volumes for the kid that he said, I think I would like to go away. I think my family has this legacy, and it's my family's legacy, and I want to go make my own legacy. And there's all different reasons kids do what they do. Notre Dame's got some terrific things to offer, no question about that, if you're a Midwest kid. And so good for him that he had the courage to step outside and take that on himself, because he's got a lot to prove now, because he's going to be in the limelight the whole time.
Harbaugh seems to have some trouble recruiting those, 5-star, 4.5-star quarterbacks. Is it a trend? Is it something to do with the program, his style, or is it just, the way things have shook out in his time?
It's an interesting question, because he was such a good quarterback himself. You would think that players would be flocking to get there. And I think they've got a nice, healthy competition going on coming up in the fall. Especially if they can get the other youngster healthy and get him to throwing it the way that he can. But maybe he's hard on quarterbacks. I haven't been to Michigan practices to really see that. Maybe he's hard in the room on them. Who knows? Again, that's a high-profile coach that brings a lot of attention to the program. And at the most difficult position there's an awful lot of pressure going on in that position.
Yeah, a couple questions here before we do let you go. So Rick wants to know who sold Michigan to you, or I guess what sold Michigan to you, I guess. What caused you to go to Michigan?
Michigan State offered me a preferred walk-on status, and I asked one of the kids as I walked out, I said, what does preferred walk-on mean? He said, it means they keep you a couple extra days before they cut you. And so I said, okay. Central Michigan made a big run at me. Dave Keilitz, who was big in the Michigan program. But I had a sister that was 2 years older than me going to Michigan. Academically, I'd already been accepted at the university, because it was one of the schools that I was very, very interested in if I didn't happen to get a scholarship. And then they offered me about 3/4 of a ride a week after Michigan State said I could be a preferred walk-on, and it seemed like it made that decision pretty easily. And I haven't been sorry. I'm still on the 46-year plan, actually, to get my degree. But
some of us.
We'll see how that goes.
I'm taking it really slow myself, so I want to rush into anything. And another question Alan has, this concerns Notre Dame and the ACC. Would you like to see Notre Dame? We know they were played there during the COVID season, and I really thought, and we may have talked about this before, I thought the ACC could have really had them over a barrel and said, you want to come in, you want to commit full time. But what are your thoughts on Notre Dame coming to the ACC or somewhere else?
I would like to see them somewhere.
Yeah,
they seem to fit the ACC profile very, very well. They fit the Big Ten profile very, very well. Also, I think, but I'd like to see them in the ACC. I thought it was a terrific year when they were in the conference. They're in with everything else. It seems like such an anomaly that it doesn't make any sense to anybody anywhere that they're not in with that sport as well, like they are with the other major sports. So, and tip my hat to Link Jarrett. And wish them good luck in Omaha too, by the way.
Yeah, a great story, them getting out to the College World Series for sure. So we'll be watching those games intently. So, Larry, I'm going to let you go tonight, but I'd certainly like to have you in periodically. There's no reason to get you in every week, because I have a hard time finding something to talk about every week. But Usually that's why we end up talking about the NIL, which gives me a headache, but it usually comes up every week, unfortunately. But I'd love to have you back.
We did our best to avoid it, so we're okay with that.
We did
anytime, Keith, anytime, glad to do it.
Absolutely. It's great to get you back on and get back in the saddle. We've missed you on the show, and we appreciate you being such a good friend of the show.
I think we got about 75 days till Thursday, September 1st at 7:30 when Wake kicks it off with VMI.
That ought to be exciting. We'll have a lot of fun between then and certainly during the season. We'll talk lots of football with you the coming months here, Larry. Thanks again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Keith.
Have a great night.
You too.
The great Lary Sorensen from Wake Forest, the color commentator there with the Demon Deacons. Certainly got to see a great season out of Wake Forest last year, and more of the same is expected for this year. And we're hoping that ACC, I hope, just so I can be clear, the Hurricanes on the other side of that conference can make their presence felt as well in Marco Cristobal's first year. So again, thanks to Lary Sorensen for that. And we'll have him in periodically. I had a lot of stuff. I could have kept Larry here until the bottom of the hour, but I didn't really want to eat up. I don't want to take advantage of Larry's time because he's very, very good about coming on when I need him. And you're right. I think Lary Sorensen is the best. He's the best guy we get on. Well, you know what? Larry and Jim Behringer. I got to give Jim Behringer credit, for hockey, and he's a knowledgeable guy. But as far as guys close to the game, Lary Sorensen's he's the best. He's a great coach. He's a great story too. Like I said, he was kidding. We were joking about the stops he made in Major League Baseball, but Lary Sorensen with the Milwaukee Brewers when I was a kid. He's a little older than me, not that much, but Lary Sorensen was a very, very good pitcher. Made an all-star team, won 18 games, and a good guy. He was one of my early guests on my interview show, which I always remember those guys. So thank you, Larry. And thank you, Rick, for making that comment. So what do you guys thought? Talking about CJ Carr and going back to this story a little bit. Yeah, I think it does speak a little bit about Harbaugh and Michigan and the fact that he has trouble getting these five-star quarterbacks to come to Michigan. Style of play, demeanor, coaching style, he just can't seem to get these guys there. And if you can't get somebody like CJ Carr with the history that his family has there, Lloyd Carr is one of the great coaches in college history. I mean, he didn't have as long a career, say, as Bo Schembechler or guys like that, but he won a national championship at Michigan, had many, many good years, and he's had a huge impact on Michigan football, even though he tried to run off Tom Brady. Tom Brady's kind of come to terms with that now. But actually, it's an interesting story about Lloyd Carr and Tom Brady. Tom Brady did not go back to Michigan for, good grief, nearly 20 years. Maybe, I can't remember. It wasn't quite 20, but it was like 18 years. And there was a real big article when he did finally go back, and he had some hard feelings about the way his career went at Michigan and his relationship with Lloyd Carr. But he went out of his way in this article to point out that now at that point in his career, I mean, he was 38 or whatever, and made a point to say Lloyd Carr, in retrospect, was one of the best things that ever happened to him because Lloyd Carr pushed him to be better. And if his career had gone differently with a different coach who just let him go out there and play willy-nilly, he may not have ever gotten to where he got, because Tom Brady's played his best football with a chip on his shoulder, and Lloyd Carr helped put it there, and Tom Brady actually thanked him for that. I love Jim. Jim's just great, and yes, he's reinvigorated my love for hockey as well, and the Rangers playing well has certainly helped as well. Anyway, back to CJ Carr. This guy's going to be a great quarterback at Notre Dame. He would have been a real big deal at Michigan, and I don't know, maybe it is better that he doesn't go there. But as we talked about with coaches kind of going back to where they have some history, the tradition of players going where they're a legacy, I think, is also something that would be good for college football, right? I mean, that's why I have the opinion I have about Arch Manning. Now, it looks now like he's not going to get to Ole Miss, like I said. Let me take this down. I never thought he necessarily was going to go there. I said he should go there. Again, what better college story would there be than Arch Manning going to Ole Miss and leading them to a national championship or even a college football playoff? There'd be no better story in college football. Now, he will go and be a great story wherever he goes. I know he visited, I think he had his first official visit this past week. I believe it was with Alabama. But he's going to visit Georgia. He's going to visit Texas. He's going to visit LSU, I believe. I don't think he's got an official visit scheduled with Ole Miss, so I do not think he'll probably end up there. But again, my opinion as a fan of college football is that I think there'd be no better story than him going to Ole Miss and playing at his grandfather's alma mater, his father's alma mater, his uncle's alma mater. And he very well could end up a Georgia dog for sure, bulldog for sure, Rick. Just not as good a story. It's just not. I mean, if Herschel Walker's son was one of the top recruits in college football, I think it would be a great story if he ended up a Georgia Bulldog and not, an LSU Tiger or an Ohio State Buckeye. It's just me. I mean, I think those are great stories, and great stories are what keep me watching sports. Certainly college football. I jump around. I'm a Miami fan, as I've said, through marriage. And I've come to enjoy watching this program try to rebound. But there's always schools that I latch onto. Wake Forest was one of them last year. They're great stories, so I root for the teams. It's not the same way. When we get to professional sports, I got one team. I do not root for any other teams. There's a few teams. I think I've gotten on Alan for this, and I apologize, Alan, for throwing you under the bus here, but rooting for more than one team. I've got friends who are Mets and Yankee fans. How are you a Met and Yankee fan? I mean, can you see somebody saying, hey, well, I'm an Alabama and Auburn fan? No. I can't do it in college. And again, I'm not necessarily a fan of Wake Forest, but there's certain programs every year that you got to get behind. I got behind Cincinnati last year because it was a great story. I get behind the military academies. I like to see Army do well. I like to see Navy do well. I like to see the Air Force do well. And not just on the football field, because we may need them to do well elsewhere soon. Oh, my gosh. Oh, true story. What else we got tonight, guys? Give me a topic. Throw something at me. I got to get to the mailbag here. Let's go into this. I had a couple questions here. Bear with me while I get here. We talked about the CJ Carr thing. I don't care about that one. This is all recruiting. I don't want to see recruiting. I want, let's see what's in here. NIL. There's always questions about the NIL. Why? Boy, I got nothing here. We're running out of topics tonight. Can't believe it. Does the Big 12 adding AAC schools in 2023 have any impact on the Oklahoma-Texas mess? Yeah, listen, I do think we talked about it earlier with the AAC schools, coming in 2 years early, basically. And again, paying $18 million a school. It's amazing to me just to get out. They're going to play with 14 teams for 2 years unless something happens. I do think something will happen, and Oklahoma and Texas will likely be in the SEC before 2025 and possibly as early as 2023, depending on what they can do with scheduling and that type of thing. Florida Gators. Will they rebound this year? We talked earlier about Napier, who could have been the Arizona State coach in 2017, and how, one of the great what if is one of the great things in sports, right? What if? We don't know. Revisionist history, hindsight, 2020 hindsight, whatever you want to call it. He could have made Arizona State. I always thought was a potential gold mine opportunity to build a great program, and nobody's ever been able to do it. Maybe Billy Napier stayed there, he would have been able to do it. I think he's going to struggle here early on in the SEC. We'll see. Florida State, there's a lot of work to do there. They brought in some good recruits. They had a good transfer portal season. We'll see whether he can turn this thing around early. I think he's going to struggle early on. That's all. Kenny should get fired up over Carr. Carr's one of the better prospects, as we talked about, in the country. So I think that's a really good one. Boy, not even much in this mailbag. See what else we got here. Back it up. Oh, give me a question. Give me a good one. A lot of questions about the scheduling a lot of questions about the scheduling changes in the power conferences. Probably within a year or so, we're going to see all the divisions gone in college football. We're going to see people either go to this 3-5-5 or 3-6-6, whatever it is, depending on the number of teams in the conferences. So you'd only have 3 schools that you would play on an annual basis. I don't know that that's good or bad yet. I've got to dig into this a little bit. What I foresee is a lot of traditional matchups going away. And you're talking the Pac-12 is already going this way. The ACC, the SEC, the Big Ten are all considering it. The Big 12, soon to be the Big 14, haven't had divisions ever. So I don't know. I know I try not to be this stick in the mud old fuddy-duddy who is always screaming about every change that goes on in my sports, but college football just seems to be going away from everything that made it great. I mean, is it a better game? Well, it's worth more money on TV and the ratings are great. They can sell a lot of advertising. But is the game as good right now as it was? Offenses are better, but is that better for the game? Same thing in baseball, right? Are a lot of home run derbies every night good for the game or better than 2-1 games? Casual fans want to see a lot of scoring. I mean, you want to see 58 to 55 games every week in the college football schedule. Sundays when I go through the schedules, or Wednesday nights when I go through some of the big games of the week before, and we look at some of the scoring and lack of defense around the leagues, it's scary how much this game has changed. And these things tend to be cyclical, and hopefully defenses will catch up with the offenses at some point. It's like sports are copycats, right? They talk about the NFL being a copycat league. Well, all leagues are copycat leagues. Whatever's successful, teams are going to get behind and do. There's certain offenses and gimmicks that work, and then defenses catch up with them. And this has been through history. There's been times where the offenses have been ahead of the defenses. A long time the defenses were ahead of the offenses. But it seems to kind of go cyclical. I'm wondering, though, because of television, the need for casual fans with the money that they're paying, the hard edged fans who want to see I'm trying to think of what Keith Jackson used to say, rumbling, stumbling, fumbling football. 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Fans don't want to see that. They want to see high-scoring affairs. So I have my doubts whether this game is going to cycle back to the defenses putting up a fight consistently. We saw Georgia with a great defense last year, an historic defense. But that's not the norm. The norm is teams scoring tons of points and having to score tons of points to just outscore the other team. And that's how we win football games. We don't stop the other one. We just outscore them. And I'm worried, as I said, with the need to have casual fans because of the money that's involved now. And, you got to be able to sell advertising to make money off these packages. Well, you're going to pay for it in your TV deals as well, by the way. So you're going to see more streaming. A lot of these games are going to end up on ESPN Plus, and eventually the Amazons of the world. Streaming is the way of the world today, and sports is going the same way. And you're going to pay to see these really good games. ESPN, as I said, paid $3 billion to get the SEC package away from CBS. They've been there for years. And I wouldn't doubt that they're going to put it someplace, one of their streaming services like ESPN Plus. I get it. They just raised the price. It was $4.99. Now it's $6.99. I noticed in my bill. And they don't even notify me. Because of the rules changes, the defenses is at a disadvantage. I agree, Rick. But historically, and you're right. And again, the same thing I complain about in baseball and even basketball or whatever sport we want to talk about. All the rule changes are to give advantage to the offense. And I really believe it's tied a lot. It's funny. Kenny always says it's about the money, right? I think it is about the money. It's because they want the casual fan. They have to have the casual fan. You can't pay these dollars and hard school, old school football fans like myself, Rick, Alan, I'll include you just because you're here with us tonight, or Anthony or Kenny. I was fine back in the day watching Oklahoma and Nebraska run the ball 85 times a game, but there were some exciting games in there. But now the game's throwing the football and pro style offenses, and you got to score points to keep people watching, because I'll sit and watch a well played defensive game. I remember back, and again, I know this is my college football show, but if you remember the New England Rams Super Bowl, right? Everybody said how bad it was. It was bad because there was good defense being played. I didn't see this as a bad football game. If I'm not mistaken, the final was 13-7 or 13-6. But again, I watched this game totally different than anybody else. And again, my team was in there, but I saw good defense. And that doesn't excite people. The Super Bowl, again, there's no other sporting event that relies on the casual fan more than the Super Bowl. And I think that's why that game got such poor ratings. Excuse me. That's why there was such outrage after the game. What an awful game. What a boring game. Well, there was good defense being played, and it's not sexy. Defense isn't sexy. I think it is. Ask some of the great defenses in football. Alan, go back in your history. I talked about Leroy and Dewey Selman last week on the show. Dewey Selman, I think, is the nominee for the College Football Hall of Fame this year. I think that's how it came up. Great defenses. The Miami Hurricanes under Jimmy Johnson, great defenses. Penn State, great defenses. Ohio State, Michigan, great defenses. to me, that was a golden age of football, the 70s and the 80s. But I don't think that type of football will sell anymore. I mean, you'll get it, and I'm not saying the game's awful, and I can't say I don't watch it because there are some really good games. But every week, I mean, when I see, what are there? I don't know. What are there, 50 games a weekend, 60 games a weekend? Half of them have scores with one team with 50 or better. It seems. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's close. So again, I don't know whether we're ever going to get back to where we were, and maybe we will, and maybe we don't need to. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think the genie's out of the bottle, and it's going to be very hard to put it back. And I think it's going to be very hard to swing the momentum back to the defensive side of the football. All right, well, that filibuster took a while. Here's a good question about the SEC, and with everything going on with the changes here, will they drop Vanderbilt? And I'm not sure that they will, because everybody needs some welcome mats, right? If for some reason, though, they end up with a team they got to go out, Vanderbilt's always going to be the number one choice. But I think they also need Vanderbilt to increase the overall GPA of the school or the conference. So I don't know that they'll do that. So I don't think that they're going to. I don't think they'll be dropping. I don't think they'll be dropping Vanderbilt. That does not mean they won't continue to expand. And I'll be talking to Larry about this in coming weeks. A lot of rumors still about the SEC wanting to build this super conference and kind of going off on their own. And schools like Clemson and Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan and pretty much any big school you can think of come up in conversation as being part of that master plan. So we'll have to see what happens. So anyway, guys, it's been a great show today. Thanks to Lary Sorensen for coming on, getting our preview season kicked off a little bit, talking about the ACC. We'll get Larry in from time to time, not every week, just because I don't want to wear him out. But your guys' comments, again, help carry this show along on all my shows. And I really appreciate the loyal following here that you guys have given us. And again, I want to give a quick shout out as I'm trying to acknowledge some of the groups that helped the show. Tonight's spotlight was on the college football discussion and recruiting page. Guys, if you don't belong to this, go look it up. They do a great job there, Gene Powell and Kayla Anderson, Jennifer Christine. 13,000 members there. Great posts. And they allow me to share this show there. So I appreciate their help there. And I appreciate you, Rick, Alan, Anthony tonight. Anybody else I missed, I apologize. Guys, let's get ready. As Larry said, 75-ish days until college football starts. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle right here on Northeast Streaming Sports. We will catch you next week. Have a great week. See you Friday with Are You Serious?
Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.